District Attorney Nathan Hochman. And, sir, we're getting this breaking news from the LAPD. They just released some numbers. I want to ask you about this. Several businesses were looted last night. 14 people arrested for looting. One was assault for a deadly weapon. One was for vandalism. 2 LAPD officers were injured. They were sent to a local hospital for treatment. So, D.A. Hochman, tell me this. What is next for these people who broke the law? This is your job to prosecute these criminals.
And that's entirely right. While we will fiercely defend the right of people to exercise their First Amendment rights to both assemble and to protest, when the line is crossed between protected speech and illegal conduct, that's when we step in. And we've made it very clear in warning messages throughout the last several days that if you want to engage in a variety of crimes, whether they're burning a Waymo, whether they're throwing cinder blocks or bricks at the police, whether they're driving a motorcycle into police lines, whether they're engaging in felony vandalism of private and public structures, we will go ahead and have you arrested, we'll have you prosecuted, and we'll have you ultimately punished to the full extent of the law. And with respect to that, we want to make it crystal clear that even though there are there are 4 million people in Los Angeles City, there's 11 million people in the county. Relatively speaking, a relatively small number of people are actually engaged in the protest to begin with, numbering in the thousands. And within those thousands, there are hundreds that are engaged in this illegal conduct. We're coming after those criminals because they're using this protest and otherwise legitimate protest to commit these violent and criminal acts. We're going to hold them accountable and they'll be brought to justice.
Now, you, of course, beat the former DA, George Cascone, who was seen as soft on crime. Your message, you're going to be tough on crime. You're following through with that. We have seen the crime statistics for the first quarter of 2025 for Los Angeles, and they're down. So we have to say that you and the LAPD seem to be really kind of, taking the right approach here to what's happening in LA. But now you've got these riots, and I wanted to get your kind of observation, what we're seeing. Do you think it was the right decision for President Trump to bring in the National Guard, usurping Gavin Newsom's power? Do you think it is the right decision to bring in the Marines?
So the National Guard and the Marines are protecting federal structures. And in downtown LA, that's 2 buildings. Right now in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Police Department has over 8,500 officers. The LA Sheriff's Department has an additional 12,000 officers. There are 45 local law enforcement agencies in LA County. They have an additional 10,000 officers. So in the tens of thousands of officers that they can bring to this task, if the civil unrest grows beyond what it has already done, the question, of course, is whether you need to have additional National Guard or Marines here as well. Again, I'm not here to speak to the deployment of federal law enforcement officers, National Guardsmen, or Marines. My job is to actually keep people safe. And that's what the DA's office will do, working with law enforcement to bring these criminals to justice.
Well, can you give me your legal opinion on what lies ahead? Because this 22-page complaint that was filed in San Francisco federal court by Governor Newsom, he's trying to stop the deployment of the National Guard and the Marines there. From a legal perspective, where do you think that this goes?
Well, again, the legal perspective is not what the focus of the DA's office is all about. There are political squabbles going on between the White House and the governor of the state of California. I'm putting those to this side because I've got a much more important job to do right now, which is to make sure that criminals understand that if they engage in these crimes going forward, they're going to be prosecuted and held accountable. And the public understands that we're working incredibly hard to keep them safe. And that law enforcement understands that if they bring the cases to the district attorney's office, we will work very hard to turn those cases around and turn them into cases that we are bringing in court to prove these people guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
One of the things that we're seeing, these rioters are now sharing this phone number, and it's linked to a group, Jail Support LA. What they're doing is, and this is your office, they're advertising free bailouts if people get arrested, and then, quote, they're telling them, don't hand yourselves over to the state. Are you aware of this development, and how does the DA's office handle that?
Well, again, the DA's office does not enforce federal civil immigration laws. That's for the federal government to do. Okay. To the extent that this bail has to do with the immigration side of it, he'll have a direct line to the federal immigration authorities and that entire system. To the extent it deals with bail for people who are violating the criminal laws in connection with the protest, A, it's not in connection with the protest because these criminals have nothing to do with legitimate protest. And B, I would actually be surprised if a bail group has shown up to support people who are burning Waymos and throwing bricks at the police. I'd be very surprised that that's the bail we're talking about.
Give me a sense of what Los Angeles is right now. It's, 12:45 there in the afternoon. How are things right now from your purview? What kind of reports are you getting from the field? Because we're looking at nationwide protests that are being organized for Saturday. So there are many cities like yours that are going to have to brace for impact if these riots continue.
So the cities that are going to have to brace for these riots, potential riots, as well as Los Angeles, should learn from Los Angeles's lessons. The police have gotten better every single day at anticipating where the crowds are going to go, channeling the crowds into spaces that is away from opportunities to break the law, making sure they have sufficient resources and law enforcement officers stationed at these various junctures to, if someone does break the law, arrest them very promptly. And to send the message to the legitimate protesters that if you want to go ahead and scream your heads off, as long as you're doing it in a peaceful way, we're going to let that happen. But for all the people who are going to use this as an opportunity to break the law, we're ready to arrest you, prosecute you, and punish you.
This isn't the first time that Los Angeles has seen these types of riots. You know, we saw this, like in other cities in New York and Chicago. LA saw the Black Lives Matter protests. Those turn violent. But what happens is peaceful protests turn into looting. And that's when businesses are affected. I mentioned that at the top of the segment when I introduced you. We're looking at the Adidas store, the Jordan store, other businesses, the Apple store that are being attacked. What does this say to the business community? What do you say to the business community? Is it safe to have retail shops in Los Angeles when you've got this unfortunate history of destruction by these looters?
It is absolutely safe. In fact, it's generally one of the more safe environments, and we're making it safer every day by sending a message to the looters that they will be held accountable for their actions. Remember, in some ways, that message has not been sent for the last number of years. And sadly, the criminals got used to nothing happening or a slap on the wrist happening if they wanted to go ahead and break into these businesses. We're now holding them proportionally accountable for all their actions. And the DA's office is working in partnership with law enforcement to actually do that. So though we will have incidents like you're showing involving an Apple store, an Adidas store, or other small businesses that have been broken into or graffitied over the last several days, law enforcement's getting much, much better at going ahead, anticipating where the crowds are going, having sufficient enough resources to deal with any particular criminals who emerge from those crowds, and making it absolutely crystal clear to them that their next path is to a jail cell.
And prosecution by your office. Very clear. Sir, thank you so much. Nathan Hochman, really appreciate you joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right.